Little Women, Chapter 12, The First Wedding. 3 years have passed and have brought but few changes to the Quiet family. The war is over, and Mr. March safely at home, busy with his books and the small parish which found in him a fine minister. Mrs. March is as brisk and cheery, though rather grayer, than when we saw her last, and just now so absorbed in Meg's affairs that the hospitals and homes miss her visits. John Brooke went off to the war for a year, got wounded, was sent home, and not allowed to return. He devoted himself to getting well, preparing for business and earning a home for Meg. He accepted a job as a bookkeeper, not wanting to borrow money from generous Mr. Lawrence. Meg had spent the time in working as well as waiting, growing womanly, wise, and prettier than ever. Jo never went back to Aunt March, for the old lady took such a fancy to Amy that she bribed her with the offer of drawing lessons from one of the best teachers. For the sake of this, Amy accepted. So she gave her mornings to duty, her afternoons to pleasure. Jo, meantime, devoted herself to writing and Beth, who remained delicate long after the fever was a thing of the past. She was never again the rosy, healthy creature she had been. Laurie, having gone to college to please his grandfather, was now getting through it in the easiest possible manner. And now let us speak of the Dovecote. That was the name of the little brown house which Mr. Brooke had prepared for Meg's first home. Laurie had named it, saying it was just right for these gentle newlyweds who went on together like a pair of turtle doves. It was a tiny house with a little garden behind and a lawn about as big as a handkerchief in front. Are you satisfied? Does it seem like home? And do you feel as if you should be happy here? Asked Mrs. March, as she and her daughter went through the new kingdom arm in arm. Yes, Mother, perfectly satisfied, thanks to you all. For her sisters and Laurie had just been helping her furnish and decorate it. Just then, Jo cried out, Laurie is coming! And they all went down to meet the boy whose weekly visit was an important event in their quiet lives. A tall, broad-shouldered young fellow with a short haircut came tramping down the road, walked over the low fence straight up to Mrs. March, and with both hands out said, Here I am, Mother. Where's John? Asked Meg. Stopped to get the license for tomorrow, ma'am. After more jokes and pleasantries, Laurie and Jo went off for a stroll. I do object to being seen with the person who looks like a young prize fighter, Jo scolded him. This haircut helps me study, returned Laurie. By the way, Jo, and to change the subject, I think that Parker, my college friend, is really getting desperate about Amy. He talks of her constantly. We don't want any more marrying in this family for years to come, said Jo. Mercy on us, what are the children thinking of? And Jo looked as much scandalized as if Amy and Parker were not yet in their teens. It's a fast age, and I don't know what we are coming to, ma'am, teased Laurie. You are a mere baby, but you'll go next, Jo. Nobody will want me. I'll be the old maid in the family. You won't give anyone a chance, said Laurie. You get so thorny, no one dares touch or look at you. I don't like that sort of thing. Now don't say more about it. Meg's wedding has turned all our heads, and we talk of nothing but romance and nonsense. As they parted at the gate of the house, Laurie said, Mark my words, Jo. You'll go next. The June roses over the porch were awake bright and early on that next morning. Meg looked very like a rose herself, for all that was best and sweetest in her heart and soul seemed to bloom into her face that day, making it fair and tender. As the younger girls stand together, giving the last touches to their simple outfits, it may be a good time to tell of a few changes which 3 years have made in their appearance, for all are looking their best just now. Jo's angles are much softened, and she has learned to carry herself with ease, if not grace. The short haircut has lengthened into a thick coil. Beth has grown slender, pale, and more quiet than ever. The beautiful, kind eyes are larger. Amy is, with truth considered, the flower of the family, for at 16 she has the air and bearing of a full-grown woman, not beautiful, but full of grace. All three wore outfits of silver gray, with roses in their hair and on their chests, and all three looked just what they were, fresh-faced, happy-hearted girls. The wedding took place in the Marches' home just as Meg wanted it. There was no bridal procession, but a sudden silence fell upon the room as Mr. March and the young pair took their places under the green arch they had fashioned for the occasion. Mother and sisters gathered close. Meg looked straight up in her husband's eyes and said, "I will," with such trust in her voice that her mother's heart rejoiced and Aunt March sniffed audibly. After the wedding feast and dancing, even Mr. Lawrence and Aunt March joined the dance. The young couple prepared to depart. When Meg came down from upstairs, changed into a dove-colored suit and straw bonnet, they all gathered about her to say goodbye. "Don't feel that I am separated from you, Marmee dear, or that I love you any the less for loving John so much," she said, clinging to her mother for a moment. "I shall come every day, Father, and expect to keep my old place in all your hearts, though I am married. Beth is going to be with me a great deal, and the other girls will drop in now and then to laugh at my housekeeping. Thank you all for my happy wedding day. Goodbye." They stood watching her with faces full of love and hope and pride as she walked away, leaning on her husband's arm, with her hands full of flowers, and the June sunshine brightening her happy face. And so Meg's married life began. Meg and John were very happy, even after they discovered they couldn't live on love alone. At first they played house and frolicked over it like children. Then John took to business, feeling the cares of the head of a family upon his shoulders, and Meg put on a big apron and fell to work with energy. It was a little more than a year later that there came to Meg a new experience, the deepest and tenderest of a woman's life. Meg had twins, a boy and a girl. The boy named John Lawrence, after his father and also his patron, and the girl Margaret, after mother and grandmother. They came to be known as Demi and Daisy. Okay, so we only have two things to put on our character analysis. Meg, it's a description of Meg and her actions on her wedding day. Meg walked away, leaning on her husband's arm, with her hands full of flowers and the June sunshine brightening her happy face. And she begins her married life. We'll go put that on Meg's page. And we're going to need to extend her, well, maybe we can get it in there. Hang on just a second. I think we can. Let's see. There we go. Yep, it's a little long. So I'm going to grab that little blue square that was right there in the middle. This one will extend the text box. But now I'm also going to take the text box. See, when I get right on the edge, I get that cross. I'm going to grab that and I'm going to move the whole thing up to the top of the page. There we go. Now we'll have more room. I can grab this box again. I can drag it down because we're going to need room for the other action, which I believe was also hers. Meg had twins, Demi and Daisy. So remember, you want to just see if I can get my cursor to cooperate. Click at the beginning of the sentence and hold it down and drag across. And then put your cursor over the blue part and right-click, copy. And then come back over. Click in the text box at the end where we just were, and then enter once on your keyboard. Put your mouse right there again, and then right-click, paste. Fits just perfect. We have any more actions by Meg, which I'm sure we will. We're going to run out of room. We'll have to figure out what to do at that point. Okay. So generally, the girls in the family would get married in order. So the oldest would have to be married first, and then Joe would be next, and they'd go right down the line. Not always, though. They could go out of order. It just kind of depended. But they had to set up a little house, and it had to be all agreeable, and off they went. And they just had a little wedding inside their house. They had dinner and dancing, just like we do today, but they didn't go on a honeymoon, like they didn't take a big trip or anything. They just went off to their new home. That was their honeymoon. They get to go to their new home and live together. She probably did make up a new dress, but she probably made it herself, or her mother made it. She didn't go to a store and buy it. Some people would if they had a lot of money, but the Marches did not have a lot of money, and it doesn't say. So our assumption is that they probably made it themselves.